Hey everybody, I am in world famous, scenic Springdale, Arkansas, in a parking garage. On the roof, if I do that, I'm nearly silhouetted, so you get to see the scenic, gorgeous interior of the parking garage. Somebody asked me, actually somebody I know in real life, somebody who I was staying with, I'll say no more, but somebody asked in relation to my most recent video, when I say leftist, what do I mean? Well, it's a simple question with a complicated answer because it depends on the context. Leftist can just mean somebody who advocates for positions which are considered to be left of center. So that could be, somebody who's a centrist, somebody who's, pretty much just like a mainstream Democrat, just leaning slightly over here toward the universal health care and what else? Maybe scaling back on the empire a little bit. Although, as far as I know, there's nothing in socialism per se which is opposed to militarism or, imperial structures. If you think I'm wrong about that, let me know. But often when I say leftist, and I mean it in a sort of derisive way, I'm using it the way Theodore Kaczynski used the term, which is to say as a personality type. A leftist is somebody who thinks of themselves as somebody who is helpless, somebody who is incompetent, somebody who is a loser, and they are resentful of people who are successful, strong, competent, confident, and they tend to take delight in imposing restrictions upon such people, or anybody really. I mean, they just tend to be sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, coercive in their mentality. They enjoy using the state as a means of restricting the liberties or, coercing other people into behaving certain ways, or these days, in speaking in certain ways. There are certain modes of thought, certain, patterns of speech which are just unacceptable, and the leftist as a personality type is going to use whatever bureaucratic structure or whatever rule structure or organizational structure to punish somebody that they disagree with for expressing, points of view that they consider to be offensive. Now there are, and this is something that Kaczynski says very clearly in the manifesto, not everybody who advocates for leftist policies is a leftist in the psychological sense. And not everybody who is coercive, in their outlook, not everybody who has that sort of, who sees themselves as being profoundly flawed and they resent people who, lack those same personality flaws, depending on the context in which they find themselves, they might find more gratification and leverage in promoting right-wing policies. It just depends on their circumstances. But in the context of the late 20th century, which is when Kaczynski was formulating his thoughts, and I would say into the 21st century even more so. I mean, his writing now seems prophetic in a way that it didn't in the late 90s when I first encountered it. The pattern here, the context here is somebody of that personality type is going to tend toward leftist positions. Now, my friend Doug Lane of the Diet Soap podcast, I think he's still doing the Diet Soap podcast, but of Sublation Media generally, describes himself, I think, as a free speech absolutist. And, while he certainly is not only a leftist, but a full-on Marxist, he's not looking to use the power of the state coercively, for psychological reasons. And Ben Burgess, somebody who has published books and somebody that I know through Doug and who has been on my podcast many times, is somebody else who is definitely, he favors leftist policies, and he himself might be a Marxist for all I know. I can't say for sure. But he has also expressed pretty much absolute support for freedom of speech and is pretty reflexively in opposition to people who are very extreme in their desire to coerce others and make them mouth particular platitudes or, punish them for saying things which are offensive. So there you have it. Two different modes of leftists. People who just, they favor leftist policies, and those who happen to favor leftist policies, but really what they like is coercion and the ability to punish people for wrongthink. Two different senses in which I use the word leftist, and I could adopt more specific terminology and have a different word for each kind, but I think y'all are smart enough and sensitive enough to pay attention to the context and understand which type I mean in which instance. All right, if you have questions, let me know. I've got to keep this short because while I can shoot videos on this phone, It takes forever to process and upload them. All right, catch you later.